Right.
There's always going to be problems, and God's calling us to be part of the solution.
Correct.
But
yeah,
also
agreed completely.
intimately in our lives. Like, you can't just hang your hands down and just wait for God to do solve the problems. Yeah. He's calling us to act.
Yeah.
To actually be part of this thing.
Right. And I think that not only because when we are acting, it's God acting through us.
Yes.
Right? I mean, bringing good into the world, bringing truth into the world,
but
bringing order
not
into
as
the world.
a puppet master.
No.
Hello, and welcome to the Mysteries of Faith show. Here we explore religion and life through a Swedenborgian Christian perspective. In this series, we're joined by Grant Schnarr, author, teacher, minister, and spiritual leader. We delve chapter by chapter into his book, You Can Believe, an introduction to new Christianity. Enjoy. I'll just ask right off the bat.
Okay.
Is the world coming to an end?
Yes.
Oh, no.
No, I mean, it has to scientifically, meaning at some point the sun...
No.
The sun's going to go out. Is God coming down to, kind of like, clean things up and,
the
apocalypse,
kill
kill
the
bad
end
people,
times.
put them in hell? No.
So no.
No, I don't think that's... Why would the love, as we've been talking from the beginning, why would the loving creator who created us from nothing but pure love all of a sudden decide, well, that's it, and want to come and destroy us, right?
Right.
So that kind of belief, I think, especially, there's different ways of believing in what's going to happen at the end of the world or what is the second coming, but this violent description of it, I just don't see at all because of the very nature of who God is. I mean, we may destroy the world. I think it's probably something that is the most likely. I hope not, but God isn't coming down here to do that.
How do we then make sense of why, at least in the book of Revelation and in other places, it sounds like there is this big thing that's going to happen? Yeah. What's going on there? Well,
it's interesting. We have talked about before, but just to put it in a nutshell, is that the Bible, right, has literal meaning. I mean, when John on the Isle of Patmos wrote about all these things to come, I believe he was looking at something literal, but at the same time, there were spiritual things happening, meaning like it was symbolic of the Romans and the Babylonians and this and that, and it wasn't necessarily all something that was going to happen in 2025 or something like that. So I think all of those things, just like in the prophets, have deeper symbolic meaning. When Jesus talks about there's going to be a time when the sun and the moon are darkened, and there won't be much light in this world, and there will be famines and wars and stuff like that. I think he's talking about number one, we've always had famines and wars, but when he talks like the sun and the moon, I think that's symbolic. The sun is love. That love will be waning in this world at a time, and maybe the moon more is a reflection of love. Our faith won't be as strong, and I do believe that is something that will happen. That there's a spiritual decline there, that we are seeing now, that Jesus said will happen, and actually it happens with every. I don't know if it's every generation, but every church that comes along, there's a decline of some kind or another, and then the hope and the promise that He will come again in one form or another to restart the spiritual movement in the world, or initiate it and continue it happening on a spiritual level, meaning maybe a new revelation or insight that people get and move forward. So it's something symbolic. The sun and the moon can't be darkened. Oh, what about nuclear, this or that, But if you go through and you break it down.
And it's too much of a stretch, too.
Everything about it. I mean, from what I have studied or heard, is that the book of Revelation is at the very end of the Bible, because when they were deciding which books were canonical, or those books that really should be in something called the book, the Bible, that they weren't sure of the book of Revelation because it was so weird. Because it had so many things, angels pouring vials and dragons and monsters and all crazy stuff in there. But you can't take it literally. I mean, even people today, all these times where people, they say, he's coming in such and such a date, sell everything you have, we'll meet you on the mountain, right? They are interpreting these things that are being said. And I think so. I think I would interpret them too. Emanuel Swedenborg interprets them, but he says from God, he's telling us what these things mean. But they are interpreted spiritually. We are free to go downhill as
Right.
human beings. And throughout time, like before the Lord was born on earth, or even now, I believe that there is something where we're going downhill, but at the same time, the Lord will raise something else up, like he did being born on earth, but other things can happen. I believe Swedenborg's teachings have a major effect on that. And it starts again.
Right. And I think that there's a key there, like that spiritual sense of the book of Revelation. One thing that I like to remember is that Christianity is already based off of the idea that there are these prophecies in the Old Testament that people got wrong and weren't meant literally. And
Right.
like Elijah didn't come back in a flaming chariot.
Right.
It turned out to be John the Baptist, a
Right.
different person who is like Elijah but is not Elijah, and completely different message. Or the day of the Lord was not a day of destruction, but the birth of a baby who grew up
Right.
and was crucified.
Right, even though they thought it was, or a king. I mean,
Right.
he's going to end up ruling the world. He says, "My kingdom is not of this world." It was a different kind of kingdom, a heavenly
So
kingdom.
all of Christianity is based off of the assumption that people misunderstood prophecies and took them literally when actually the Lord meant something more. And it's the same thing with the end
Today,
times or the
right?
apocalypse.
End times.
What I find fascinating there is that the Lord did actually tell the disciples specifically, do not hear about, people are going to claim all sorts of things. You know, it's like,
Lo,
you're going to
he is
hear,
here, lo, he is there.
right,
da, da, da,
you're
da.
going to hear this. You're going to hear about wars and rumors of wars and famines and earthquakes, and people are going to say, here he's coming, he's coming. No. And in fact, nobody knows, not even the angels know when this is happening. Which I think, if Jesus said nobody knows, then I'm pretty sure the random televangelist on TV does not know. And I'm not going to pretend to know.
Yeah.
Because that's not a thing that you can know in that sense. Yeah. Agreed. Now, but the other part that was interesting that I would love to focus on is that spiritual meaning of what is the end times. Because you said it, and I agree with you, that it can happen for many churches or organizations or the ways that people worship the Lord, but it can also happen for individuals. Like there is a final judgment for each of us, but it's not balls of fire coming out of space. It's something more spiritual.
Thank goodness, right.
Right. Or maybe that would actually be easier.
Well, our own end of times, I think, is with our own passing into the other world. I mean, and I will say right away, the judgment is really something of our own. In other words, Jesus said, "I don't judge you. It's my word is what judges you," or something like that. And I don't know if I got the words exactly right, but what he was saying is like, sure, it's set up. I mean, the whole world is set up so that you can go to heaven and you're free to do that, but it's got to be set up so that you don't. So if you want to make a hell out of your lives and end up in your own hell in the other world when you die, you can do that too, okay?
Right.
But the judgment that's taking place is not God going, you're going to, you didn't make it, you're going down there, or, oh, thank you, you're going to go up here, you did pretty well, not perfect, but I'll let you in. It doesn't work that way. There isn't no grand judgment. And you can see that even like Jesus on the cross at the very end, when the thief says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He didn't say, "All right, that'll be about 2,500 years from now, but hey, listen, I'll make a note." I mean, it was like he turned to him and said, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Like it's happening today, now, when we all go into this other world.
Or elsewhere, he says, you will not see the end of your life before you see the coming of the kingdom. And he's telling the
To his
disciples,
disciples, yeah.
well
right
then
there.
it must have happened for them,
Right.
in their lives,
Right.
but that's
again.
their judgment.
Yeah.
But there is this idea, and you mentioned Emanuel Swedenborg, the idea that there is a more discrete global second coming of God, or of the Christ, of Jesus and the Lord coming again to humanity. Speak a little bit about what that means. What is the second coming of God?
That's really huge. But first, to lead into that, I mean, Jesus even said, "I have many things to say to you now, but however you cannot bear them. I have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now. Howbeit, the Spirit of truth will come, and he will guide you into all truth." He even goes on to say, he will not speak on his own account, but he will speak for me. And I think Swedenborg very much believed that not him, but that his teachings that God gave him to put down would usher in a new era, which he believed very strongly would be that fulfillment of that Holy Spirit teaching us, not simply God is loving, but God is love, and all the things we talked about, why we're here, the whole thing, what happens when we die, what is the Bible really about. He believed that his teachings would usher in this new era of the second coming. It doesn't mean necessarily that an organization like you and I are priests of or pastors of or anything means that has to grow and take over the earth. It means these ideas, these beautiful, wonderful ideas, and not even I would call them truths if they're true, as people catch on to these ideas and believe them and live them, the world itself is going to change. Jesus will be here in a way that he wasn't 1,000 years ago,
right?
Kind of thing like that.
I like that focus on the truth,
yeah,
or the teachings, because when Jesus said, "You can't handle it right now,"
right?
Basically,
that's what he
said.
said.
I'm going to have to come back when you can handle
right.
it. Like we've talked in previous chapters about the fundamental truth about marriage is that it's between two equals.
Right.
If you had told the people of ancient Rome, "Hey, by the way, marriage is between two equals. Men and women are equally partners. There's no property involved, and it can last forever," they would have said, "That sounds stupid and ridiculous."
They wouldn't even comprehend it. I don't
Right.
think, like, what? What's that even
What are you
mean?
talking about?
Right. And there are so many things like that people are not able to bear.
All people have inherent worth, no matter where they were born. Slavery is inherently evil, no matter what. You can't just tell a slave-based society like Imperial Rome, marriage, women are equal, there should be no slavery, children, etc. All the good things that a lot of modern society, and I think probably a lot of our audience, takes for granted.
Yeah.
One teaching that I love from the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg is the idea that when people die, they're immediately in the other world, and they could very quickly be angels, and that we have angels with us. And that's not taught directly in the Bible. That's something that Emanuel Swedenborg taught 250 years ago, but it's such a popular, so almost assumed belief among so many religious people.
It's like been absorbed in what Swedenborg has said. And so many things have, I believe, in our culture have been absorbed from what Swedenborg says. So many people, if you were to say, do you believe that God, in a loving God? Oh, yeah. And that wasn't always the case. Now, there are people that go, oh, no, he's going to get us and all that or whatever. But it's almost universal that God is a God of love in one way or another. That did not exist forever. But God was, there's times where God was very harsh and going to get you and stuff like that.
At least the opinion about him was.
Well, exactly. Well, no, he wasn't. You're right. But, human freedom and dignity is another one. Like you were just talking about, women or whatever. But that was true across the board. I mean, like people aren't equal. People they don't have, they're not free. We're not going to make them free. They can't. And, certain people are more human than others. Certain have more choice, and people less. Swedenborg comes along and says, we're all equal. It doesn't matter where we're from, black, white, whatever, that kind of thing as well, female, male. We're all equal. We all get to make meaning. We all get to make those choices, whether we want to be heavenly or hellish. We have that freedom. But also, God loves every single one of us and values us all. There's not people that are valued more than others. People didn't see that, way back for centuries. People wouldn't see that. And that's why their slavery was such a big thing. I mean, they didn't think about that, oh, no, this is wrong. And today, actually, some of the founders of the anti-slavery movement, both in England, which it really took off in England, but also in the U.S., were readers or influenced by Swedenborg and really held up that idea historically that people need to be free.
Right. And I think that those ideas, those true ideas that have such a blessed goodness inside them, it's not just, oh, here's a neat idea. It's like, oh, actually, this is an idea that has good for all of humanity inside it. It's not just an idea. It's a little bit like the old, once the genie's out of the bottle, you can't shove it back in. The world is still bad in a lot of ways. And there's slavery in pockets of the world. There's tyranny, there's evil, there's still people manipulating religion for bad causes. But now that countervailing truth about a loving God, about the proper place of religion, about the inherent worth of an individual is always present, always there saying, no, this is what is true. And that
Yeah.
can never be taken back.
Correct.
And that is a new revelation.
Certainly,
new
it's
advent.
a new era. It's a new understanding, right? And I think the other, I mean, just to clarify, again, one of that point about the slavery is that, yeah, there are things going on underground everywhere and things like that. But there's a universal understanding that slavery is evil.
Right.
That people can ignore that, they can hide from it. There's going to be groups everywhere that believe things that are not
Even
good.
Even horrible nation states basically
Child
legalize
labor or
slavery
something,
and things
yeah.
like that. Like to lie and pretend they don't.
Well, yeah,
Because
well,
they're
that's
still
human nature.
saying, well, they're not arguing that slavery is good. They're
just say
pretending
that.
they don't have
Right,
it.
right.
They're saying, oh, slavery is
Yeah.
evil. We just don't have
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
But it's sort of like, well, no, now there's sort of an assumed the way things are. And yeah, there are outliers, but it's amazing to see how that truth is just the way things are now.
Yeah. Well, the other thing you talked about, like things get bad and things, in a way that's almost split. Things are getting worse, but at the same time they're getting better. I see that, is in the book of Revelation. It talks about the separation of the sheep and the goats. Not necessarily at this time that means, okay, all these people are going to go to hell. Now that we separate them, all these people are going to go to heaven. But rather, as people are progressing in this world, and in some ways the organized church doesn't seem to have the same power, or over the years hasn't necessarily lived up to what the organized church could be. People have kind of moved away from God in that sense. But on the other hand, there have been people that have really, in their own freedom, grasped God and gathered groups and community together, or built community. I say even the United States is based on teachings or ideas that were not prevalent before. It's almost like, so people are allowed to get worse, but they're also allowed to get better. The whole thing
Right.
is freedom.
Right.
So we do see terrible things acted out. Now, we've got cameras everywhere nowadays and people reporting on it. I mean, evil's always been around, but we do see things that we'd probably say, that's terrible or immoral.
Right.
The church has lost its control over that, so to speak. But at the same time, the church has lost control over telling us exactly what we should do and how much money we should give, and how much power the priests have, and so on and so forth. That people see and poo-poo the church because of it. But there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good that's happening in this world. There's a lot of good that organized religion is doing right now. And yes, we see the opposite of that is going on as well. But I think we all hope, and I think this pretty much, if there is a God and He's in charge, good's going to win in the end.
There's always going to be problems, and God's calling us to be part of the solution.
Correct.
But
yeah,
also
agreed completely.
intimately in our lives. Like, you can't just hang your hands down and just wait for God to do solve the problems. He's calling us to act.
Yeah.
To actually be part of this thing.
Right. And I think that not only because when we are acting, it's God acting through us.
Yes.
Right. I mean, bringing good into the world, bringing truth into the world,
But
bringing
not
order into
as
the world.
a puppet master.
No, where we accept. I think about it as energy, as positive energy. Love itself. Whatever we choose, how we're going to direct it. There's no puppet there, but the very joy that we feel is the joy that God gives us, or flows into. That joy flows into us with the goodness that we are now putting out into our lives. And imagine that on a global scale,
Right.
with community. And that's where we get into this is the end of times, or the second coming being God. We are now free to have God flow into us in a deep, deep, satisfying way, if we choose. But that's the dream. And I think that's what's interesting about Swedenborg. He talks a lot about, the church that will come, or the new church. I think it's pretty clear. He didn't mean there was going to be an organization with these buildings and people were going to be singing hymns and stuff like that. What he meant was a new community, a new understanding of God, a new spiritual community, even with doctrines that they were following and things like that. But it was something that when he talked about it, he was talking about a vision for the future of humankind. There's going to be a new era. What we call the church, where we are gathered together, is going to be brand new in what it believes. Right. And for me, that's so much more real.
Yeah.
Than some particular group is going to take over the world or something.
Yeah, a new heaven and a new earth.
Yeah.
And a new church and new ideas. Behold, I make all things new. one of the struggles or frustrations that I sometimes have is I'm eager for that newness. And
think we
yet
all are.
in my real everyday life, a lot of things are still very old. And I think that's me needing to learn patience. But I think it's also that sometimes the newness isn't in completely new forms or ways things look or the way things are organized, but in the new spirit that you can bring it into. Like, I have a marriage that's very different than a marriage that I would have had 2,000 years ago. It's still one man, it's still one woman. We're still bound together in raising children and sharing money and a house and things like that. But we come at it with such a newer kind of understanding and appreciation based off of these truths. And I think that's what's exciting for me as doing this podcast or reading this book and sharing it with an audience is the idea that we can reach people and say, would you like to be part of the new thing?
Right.
Or would you like to take what's in your life and revitalize it, give it new life? And I think that's a very exciting invitation that even an older organization like a church can be part of. That church can be revitalized, made new.
Well, yeah, organized religion can do things that individuals can't do. But also can and do change the world. And in anything, there's going to be those perversions. I mean, you can look at every business. I mean, there's that temptation or a side of a lot of businesses which aren't acting in the best interest of people. We already know that. Why would church be any different? You're going to find that over the years. We can go back in history, and everybody can point out times where, the church should have been indulgences, getting people out of, purgatory or something. Just give me some money. Everybody looks at that and goes, that wasn't such a good idea. We go back and see idea after idea that may not have been so good. But you see tremendous, development, what the church was able to do from spiritually valuing people and giving people the sense that they are valuable to building beautiful cities or walking into places where people had nothing and helping them to grow and take care of themselves and to live. It's been amazing what the church is able to do at the same time. Community is great, and so I love what you say. So even the work that I do, I love it. I mean, I can't think of a better job for me personally and being called to it, I feel like, than to help people have a happy life through a connection with God and one another. I love that.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much comes to the end of our series. My last little point is just to the audience, really, and that is we've been talking about this book, You Can Believe, that Grant Schnarr, thank you for writing, and it's been a joy for me to come back to it. And we're both ministers of a new church, is what one way we call it, and there's newchurch.org and things like that you can visit to find out more. But I think for me, the invitation I like to make to people is not come join the new church, but come help us make a new church. Help us make a new way of living, be a part of something new with us. And just by your participation, it will change.
Absolutely.
And the Lord will be there.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right.
Very exciting. This has been such a gas. I love it. Yeah. And, thanks for having me on at the same time.
We'll have you back about other subjects.
Fantastic. I'm sure. I love it. It's great. Let's rock and roll with this.
All right.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Grant.
You're welcome. Thank you.